Carnival looking to change the check-in process? What made them look into it? And what is the change going to be if it happens? And I believe it will happen. And there's some signs that it's happening already. Let's talk about it right after this.
Cruise goes! Yeah! I love you, Go Cruise! I love you!
I just can't get away from a good time.
Coach Cruise, like, subscribe, share. You know what to do.
Okay, before we talk about changing a policy, let me first say that this whole thing wouldn't even be a thing if I would have done my job as a traveler. Now, in every single video I have done related to this, I explain that first it is my fault. What's my fault? My fault is I didn't have a passport that was good for 6 months or longer from the end of your last cruise date. That is what I needed to have, and I didn't have that, and that was my fault. Now, even though I expressed that multiple times in multiple videos, there were still some people on the Coach Cruise Facebook page and group that said, you're blaming Carnival, you're not taking responsibility. So again, for anybody out there that is like, oh, well, you got to know that and everything. And you're right, ultimately it comes down to the consumer. And again, ultimately, it's my fault. You know, once again, I mean, obviously it started with me and my mistake. And, but, you know, obviously, I think it's pretty easy to see there are some things that Carnival could have done differently. They would have had this turn out a whole lot happier. You know, maybe not even on the cruise, but at least not traveling all the way around the world and things like that. So I'm hoping something good comes out of this. We'll wait and hear what Carnival has to say. Okay, and that was taken from just one video. And the fact is, I probably made about 4 or 5 videos, some of them live, some of them recorded, in which, and multiple times during the video, I bear responsibility first for screwing up the passport. Now, how do we make it better? What can we learn from this situation aside from, you know, you as a cruiser, you as a traveler taking ultimate responsibility, number one? Well, there's a lot of new cruisers out there, and there's a lot of cruisers that would like, you know, to Carnival to potentially help them if they do make a mistake. And here's how you can do it. Okay, now here's the thing that I feel could have been made better. And I said, you know, if this one thing would have been fixed, then none of this would have even happened, right? I wouldn't even be making this video. Okay, so prior to, at check-in, I should say, prior to your cruise, you have to check in. You have to check in online. Now, for some people, if you're platinum or diamond, you can check in 17 days early. And if you're lower than that, you can check in 14 days early. Okay, so approximately 14 days prior to the cruise, I went to check in. You know, you have to enter a number of different things. You have to enter credit card information, for example. Let's take your credit card. If I enter a credit card and I'm 1 digit off, just 1 digit, what's going to happen? Some of you have already experienced this. It's going to say, sorry, we can't process your credit card. You did something wrong. You're either going to have to try to re-enter the number or try a different credit card. Has that happened to anybody? Probably. It's probably happened to all of us at some point. So they can check that and they can catch that right there, right away. Now, Carnival also knows all the ports that you're going to, correct? And they ask you for your passport information. They ask you for your passport book number. They ask you where your passport was issued from. They ask you for the date that it was issued and the date that it expires. Why are you asking me all that information if you're not going to use that information in the moment? You use it for my credit card, you use it for all the other information that you put in, but you didn't use it for me before I traveled halfway around the world. Now, when I got to port and I gave them my passport, it said, I have to check on something. And the lady walked away and she came back, and then another person came with her and said, yeah, sorry, your passport is going to be shy of 6 months by a couple days. And you're not going to be able to board. Sorry. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? You know, and I was in shock. Now, that's the point that I'm trying to make here is, you know, if you can get notifications that your credit card's wrong, that this is wrong, that this date's wrong, that you didn't do this right, why can't you do that for your passport? Why do I have to enter that passport information and you're not going to apply it to anything. So when I get to the port, you have to check and verify that that passport's going to be good for my travel. Why can't you do it at check-in? If they'd have done it at check-in, not only would I have not traveled halfway around the world for nothing, that's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is I would still miss the cruise, right? But I wouldn't travel halfway around the world. Best case scenario is I say, oh my God, they're right. I'm going to be 3 or 4 days short of this 6 months. Let me try to go to the U.S. Embassy. Let me try to go to the U.S. Consulate. You know, it might have been too late at that point to even get an expedited passport, but I would do whatever I needed to do to make sure that this happened, right? But I didn't get that opportunity because I didn't get that notification. I thought I was good. Now, there was a couple other things that led me to believe, you know, that I was good, and a couple reasons why, you know, I might have let this slip. I knew my passport was expiring in February of 2025, the first day of February 2025. I knew that. But I had gotten a notification, an email, suggesting that for a Thanksgiving cruise that I was going on, that passport information that I'd entered previously on previous cruises, I was going to have to renew it. I never got an email for this cruise that I was denied boarding. So that kind of led me to believe, like, okay, it's not going to be good for this cruise in November, but it's good for this cruise. And also, I was boarding this cruise in July, and like I said, the passport that I had expired in February. Obviously, I didn't do the math, but I thought that was around 7 months, you know, in my head. I didn't even think I was that up against it. And again, I was only ended up being short by 3 or 4 days, but it is what it is. Again, that is my fault, a cruiser. Now, how does this help Carnival out? You might say, well, it's your responsibility and Carnival shouldn't have to bear that responsibility. Well, you know, you can have that argument, but I'm going to tell you why it's not a very smart argument, is because if I get to port, you got 2 hours before the sail away party or whatever, and I go up to the window and say, hey, here is my passport and everything else, and you say it's no good right there. I'm not getting on the ship. Some of you know, I like to go to the casino. I like to gamble. I love going to the steakhouse. And on a 15-day cruise, you can bet I'd have gone at least twice. And then the casino, let's admit it, you know, the casino's not there to lose money. So chances are I'm going to lose money. Maybe I'm going to lose a couple $1,000, maybe more. Maybe I'll win, who knows? But chances are more people are going to lose than they're going to win. That's money that was not brought to Carnival. That is money that Carnival would have gotten had I been on that ship. Not to mention, I mean, obviously I put out some videos that put them in not the brightest of lights, or, you know, a good light, because I was upset that I didn't get on the cruise, and I felt there were some things that could have been done differently. Now, here's some other things that happened, and some policy that I feel that needs to change, that is only going to make Carnival a better company and a better travel experience for your cruiser. Okay, once I got denied boarding, you know, I was told, obviously I'm not going to get on the ship. We've already gone into that. And, you know, when they were starting to walk me out, I had talked with a number of different people, and then the idea came about, like, hey, you should go to the U.S. Consulate. You should go to the U.S. Embassy. You need to get a valid passport that's good for 6 months or longer, correct? Yes and yes. So go do that. And then the ship is going to be in Brisbane, Australia, which is a short flight away. And it's going to be there on Tuesday. At the time, it was Sunday. The U.S. Consulate in Sydney opened on Monday morning. So I said, wow, okay, that's my plan. Now, as I was walking off with the port supervisor in Sydney, I said, is there any other information you can give me? Phone numbers, whatever. They gave me a phone number, basically like 1-800-CARNIVAL or whatever, but Carnival's offices in the United States were closed because the time difference was so vast. So I couldn't even call Carnival at that time. And so when I was talking to the port supervisor, I said, look, you know, here's the thought. I'm going to go to the U.S. Consulate in Sydney and get a passport, because you're telling me I need a valid passport that's good for 6 or more months. She said, that sounds like a good idea. If that's the case, you should be able to join the ship in Brisbane. All right, now she just had the best of intentions, I'm sure, but she was wrong. Now, this is the supervisor of that particular port. Now, obviously, I'm a U.S. traveler, and a lot of U.S. travelers go to Australia. So this couldn't have been the first time that this happened. But even if it was, shouldn't you as a supervisor have the training to realize, hey, just so you know, this ship is going to this country and this country and this country, and you won't be able to get just any passport. It can't be an emergency passport because that won't be accepted by these following countries. She had no idea. Obviously she wouldn't mislead me and make me think that it's a good idea to go do this, right? So that's exactly what I did. I went to the U.S. Consulate in Sydney, and the appointment I signed up for online, the earliest appointment they had was Wednesday, which obviously I wanted to try to get on the ship Tuesday in Brisbane. And so I talked to a security guard. He gave me an email for emergency situations, and the U.S. Consulate came through. They emailed me back, and they said, look, go get yourself a new passport photo and send us the itinerary of your travel. And so I did all that, and they said, okay, come on back. Now, one thing I will interject here is I believe the U.S. Consulate in Sydney was a little bit to blame for that, and a couple people have pointed this out. I shared my itinerary with them, and I assume that that's why they asked. They should have known that Indonesia and I think Singapore also didn't accept emergency passports. They should have known that and told me basically like, okay, hey, we'll give you an emergency passport, but we can't give you a 10-year passport here. And this itinerary that you shared with us, these guys aren't going to accept. Now, they should have told me that too, but they didn't. So, it wasn't just Carnival that I felt dropped the ball here. Now, I get this emergency passport, and again, I made a video, I did a live and everything, and I said, look, everybody, I got my valid passport because Carnival had sent emails saying you need to have a valid passport. Well, I was holding a valid passport that was good for a year. So, I thought I was good, right? I got to the airport, I got on a plane, I flew to Brisbane, I booked a hotel in Brisbane, just waiting for the next morning, and I'm going to get on the ship. And I shared also that I was going down that next morning to meet the ship, and I was hungry. And I remember thinking like, I need to get something to eat. I'm starving. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm going to take the Uber to the ship, and I'm going to be on the ship in like an hour. I'm going to show them my passport. They got my boarding document, everything else, and boom, I'm going to walk on, and everybody's going to be happy, me most importantly, right? And get there, and obviously that didn't happen. And I've already explained this. They looked at the passport, and they told me, Indonesia does not accept emergency passports, so you're not going to be getting on the ship. And once again, the port supervisor or the Carnival Splendor travel supervisor, whoever it was that came out to talk to me, I was upset, I was frustrated, asking some questions, this and that. And once it was finally determined, like, okay, I understand I'm not getting on the ship, I'm like, okay, I have to get back to the United States. Is there some phone numbers, from Carnival Travel or something that you can give me so I can call them and they can kind of help me find a plane that will fly me back, because I wasn't supposed to fly back until, the end of the cruise. And here it was 3 days into the cruise, and I'm in Brisbane, Australia, not Singapore, where the ship was supposed to end. And I needed to change my flights and get, a same-day ticket to try to get back to the United States. And her answer, 1-800-CARNIVAL. And then I called Carnival, and thankfully the offices were still open. I did talk to somebody, and basically after somewhat of a lengthy conversation, they basically said, yeah, we're not going to be able to do anything for you. What you can do is you can talk to guest care. And I'm like, okay, can you transfer me to them? And they said, oh, well, yeah, they don't really have a phone that I can transfer you to. They don't have an extension that I can transfer you to. You have to email them. So I emailed them and was hoping I'd get a response immediately. It was the exact opposite of immediate. Even though I put in the subject ASAP, urgent, desperate, whatever, stranded, all that, nothing, crickets. Thankfully, the help of a few people, I was able to get on a flight, and I was able to get on a flight to San Francisco several hours later. But I never got in contact with guest care. As a matter of fact, I put out a short video, and I think it was 9 days later, and I said, Carnival still has not contacted me. You know, even this situation, as dire as it was, Carnival still has not contacted me. Now, and I shared an email in which their email said, you know, it could take as long as 5 business days. Well, it took obviously almost double that. I am happy to report August 2nd, Carnival reached out to me. And since they reached out to me, and again, I talked to that specialist, she was absolutely wonderful. And she said, hey, you know, really sorry for this delay, but we are on it. And upper management is even looking into this case and trying to figure out how, you know, Carnival can do better. And very empathetic, great phone call. And I will go so far as to say this, you know, although nothing's been done yet, so I can't confirm this. Basically, as I've said, you know, first it's my fault. Although I felt like, you know, the check-in procedure could have flagged my passport, ultimately that's my responsibility. So Carnival, what seems like they're doing is they're taking responsibility from when I was denied boarding the first time, and I stayed a couple nights in a hotel, and because I was talked to Carnival employees. In fact, I talked to a Carnival employee over the phone Monday morning, and they said as much that they were going to be sending a form to the Carnival Splendor letting them know that I was going to be attempting to board and that I would be having an emergency passport and things like that. And again, that representative could not tell me that passport wasn't going to work either. And so I feel like there's some better training that needs to be involved by Carnival employees, especially employees that are going to work directly with travelers that might be in a situation like mine. If you have a phone number and you're supposed to be, you know, an expert in this situation, then you have to know those things, right? Or at least you would think you would have to know. One idea I have is to simply send out a flyer or an email for every cruise. Have a department or a couple people within the Carnival offices that know the itinerary for all these different cruises, and they basically just have to find out which country has the strictest policy in terms of passports and stuff like that. And if something goes wrong and somebody can't board for whatever reason, the port supervisor doesn't even have to know anything. They can just print this, you know, flyer out and say, look, if you were denied boarding for this, here are the steps you can take. If you were denied boarding for this, here are the steps that you can take. You know, and if it's some rare situation that, you know, nobody's ever seen, well, you know, maybe they'll have a different policy for that. But I'm talking about phone numbers, you know, things you could do, even, you know, phone numbers to airlines and stuff like that. Have a way that you can help your cruiser out, make it through, you know, what is obviously going to be a very difficult situation, a horrible situation, because they think they're going on vacation. Instead, they get cold water thrown in their face. And even if it is their fault, I mean, you want to have some empathy, you want to have some compassion. And then, you know, maybe if you can help them out, like in my situation, oftentimes, you know, if it's just a matter of a missed flight, maybe that's why you missed the ship or something like that, oftentimes you can catch up with the cruise. And if it's a lengthier cruise and the port that you're going to isn't too far away, sometimes you can catch up with the ship and you'll be allowed to board. But, you know, if somebody has that information, they might be okay, and they can fix it. So, again, this isn't a Carnival bashing video. This is a Carnival, hey, let's get better. Let's get better. Let's help your consumer more, which in turn is going to help you. Again, you know, imagine if this was a honeymoon couple, and I was the groom, and I made this mistake. Let's say I'm a new cruiser, and I don't know any better. It's an international travel, right? Here I am, Coach Cruise, and that was going to be my 50th cruise with Carnival, just with Carnival. I've done other cruises too, but just with Carnival, my 50th cruise, and I made that screw up. Imagine other people that never cruise, that rarely travel, that, you know, this situation, imagine how that could absolutely save their honeymoon, their anniversary, that big birthday, you know, a graduation celebration. Imagine how impactful, you know, that one simple change could be. that you are red flagged a couple weeks before your cruise and basically told like, hey, you got to get on this, you got to fix this, or you can't cruise. And give that cruiser a chance. It is going to be their responsibility first, but as a multi-billion-dollar company, you can help your cruiser out, and your cruiser is what makes you a multi-billion-dollar company, right? So we're going to find out, and I will keep you updated. If you are not already subscribed to Coach Cruise, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you can get all the different updates from me. And again, it's not this type of cruise news and stuff that I talk about. We do cruise vlogs, we do ship tours, we do a weekly live where we're talking cruising on various topics, and we're interviewing some of the top people within the Carnival cruise fleet, including multiple cruise directors and many more. So make sure you're subscribed. And I know this was a little lengthier video. There was a lot to talk about, but if you stuck through it all the way to the end, bless you, thank you, and happy cruising. We'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Do such an awesome job.
Oh, sure.
And secondly, and this one is huge, like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know when this man is posting more videos.
I appreciate that you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lee.
I just can't get away from a good time.